Hey guys, Greg here at the Vinyl Rundown. And once again, it seems like an annual event. We have the great jazz detective himself, Zev Feldman, joining us from the East Coast. Zev, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Greg. Thanks for having me, man. Good to be back with you.
Hey, thanks again for joining us. And you've been kind enough to send me some of the promos that you're doing for the big record store day drop that's coming up Black Friday, day after Thanksgiving.
Yep.
Huge day for vinyl collectors. And you've got records coming out on two different labels, five records in total. And I think the first two we're going to talk about are on Resonance, right?
Yep. Yep.
We have Al Jarreau, we have Emily Remler. Where's BB King fit into this? Is that on?
No, that's on Elemental Music.
Okay, we'll put that aside for now.
Yeah,
We could start with Emily Remler. I'm going to grab over here.
sure.
Emily Remler, tell us, a lot of young jazz fans don't know who Emily Remler was because she didn't live too long. What's her story? And then tell us about the record.
Well, Emily Remler, I've been on this personal crusade, it seems, for decades now, speaking about her greatness. She was 32 years old when she passed away in 1990, and there hasn't been a new album since her passing. She had made six albums on Concord. Um, she toured quite a bit around the country, and she was really an important guitarist, someone who I think has not gotten the due that she is deserves. And I am an enormous fan. And these recordings, Cooking at the Queens from Las Vegas in 1984 and 1988, are recordings that she had made for a KNPR broadcast, a radio program that aired every week out of Las Vegas from the Four Queens Hotel. And it was hosted by the jazz impresario Alan Grant. And she did this program three times actually over the years, but these recordings are from 1984 with a quartet and 1988 with a trio. And this is actually a couple things that are really important. This is the first ever official live recording to come out from her. And it's also the first unissued material to surface in over 34 years. And these recordings capture her in a brilliant light in a live setting. Quite a different experience than the studio albums that were made. And I've just been an enormous fan. And we found these tape reels actually a number of years ago. In 2016, I did a Shirley Horn album for Resonance Records. Um, and I knew about the existence of these tapes. And I had been looking for a very long time of trying to find something previously unissued. And as it turned out, there was actually additional material. You had an hour-long broadcast that was eventually mixed down, but there was other music that was recorded that never aired. And these recordings feature over an hour of music that's never been released before. And this package celebrates her legacy, her memory. It's really a love letter and a tribute to her. Those are the actual one of the actual tape reels that we worked with from the KNPR archives, which are stored at UNLV in Las Vegas. But I wanted to pay tribute to her, and I worked with her family and putting this project out. But it's very significant for me personally. I just think that she is an unsung hero. And I think that, Emily Remler, Greg, has influenced future generations that followed. And she has left a legacy behind, but it's almost been like it's a travesty that it's almost like she doesn't get spoken about as much as she should. And I think that she was a trailblazer. And, she played straight ahead jazz. There's a very interesting quote that ran in a feature on her in People magazine in the early 1980s, maybe I believe it was 81
Yeah,
or 82.
I think I'm
And
looking for that quote right now.
she said, I may be a nice Jewish girl from New Jersey, but inside I'm a 50-year-old heavyset black man with a big thumb.
That's
And she
that's
was
the quote
influenced, yeah, and she
right
was
there.
greatly influenced by Wes Montgomery, Pat Martino. But, she also toured with Astrid Gilberto. She could play the heck out of, bossa novas. And And these recordings really capture her in a trio and quartet setting. And it gives you a chance to really hear her in a live setting, quite different than these studio recordings. But I really have to tip my hat to my co-producer Bill Milkowski. Many folks may know him. He's a prolific author. He wrote biographies on Michael Brecker and Jaco Pastorius, and he was my co-producer. He helped me vet this material. And like I said, we've got over an hour of music that's never been heard before. So besides just writing the liner notes, Bill was tremendously helpful in us selecting the right material and additional music to issue. But listen, we also we had a lot of interviews in here. I spoke with the great Cheryl Bailey, also had the last interview, one of the very last conversations with Russell Malone before he passed. And we spoke about Emily. I messaged him on Facebook and I'm like, hey, can we talk about Emily Remler? And the phone rings and it was him. He's like, are you ready? Let's do this. I got some stories. And she's really affected a lot of people, and amongst contemporaries of hers and peers. So we spoke with Russell, of course, David Benoit, Mike
There's,
Stern,
there's like
Rodney
20 people on
Jones,
here.
Amy Fox. Yeah, I mean, I really wanted to take the opportunity to pay homage to her. Um, but these are great recordings. They sound fantastic. These were broadcast quality. And again, there's music here, but if you think you heard it before, because some of this, and I say some of the music had been on YouTube, um, we now have all this other additional material included on this release. So I'm very proud, and I want to thank Bill Milkowski. And I especially want to thank my co-president at Resonance Records, George Claben, for believing. This is a limited edition release too. We only made 2,300 for the world, but it's an important project, and I just hope folks will take the opportunity to listen to her and
Let
celebrate her and
let me
talk.
ask you about one person involved in her life that a lot of people don't know about is Monty Alexander,
Yes.
who she was married to only briefly.
Yep.
And you've done an album with him. He wasn't in contact with you for this project though, not in
No,
terms of
he has no involvement with
right.
this release. Yeah.
Well, interesting. Uh, Great. Let's move on to the next release, unless there's anything else about Emily. What about
Yeah.
Al?
Let's talk about Al Jarreau. Um, this is a very personal project for me in many ways. I was lucky in the early 2000s. I worked for Universal Music Group, and we got to represent the Verve Music Group and GRP label. And I actually got to know a little bit the great Al Jarreau and spent quite a bit of time with this man. First of all, I want to say he was obviously an incredibly virtuosic talent. Um, he was a one of a kind, the way he would emulate different instruments and sounds, and he had his own stylistic way of approaching music. He was a brilliant man. But if you also were fortunate, like I was, spending time with him was always something very uplifting. He was a very personable guy. He was also a social worker in a previous career, and he had this uncanny ability for connecting with people. In his performances, which you'll hear on this, but even just being around him. And I remember being in my early 20s, being this introverted version of myself, and how kind he was. And I remember one night, I think we were having dinner with some executives at Black Entertainment Television together. I was invited to this meal and he was there. And we sat next to each other and we were talking. And he said, hey, Zev, you know where the first place I ever played in Washington, D.C.? I said, no, Al, where did you play? He said, I played a club called the Child Herald in D.C. Now, the Child Herald was the first place where Bruce Springsteen played in Washington. The likes of Bonnie Raitt and Emmylou Harris also played there. And in the summer of 1976, Al was booked to perform there with his trio with Tom Canning on piano, Ben Atkins on bass, and forgive me, I have to pull this up, Tom Drake on drums. But you wouldn't believe my surprise last year. There's a gentleman named David Einstein who's here in the Washington area. And he was the former operations manager and air talent himself at WHFS Radio in Washington. There's actually a PBS special on the history of that station now called Feast Your Ears, and you can get it on the PBS app. Worth checking out. WHFS was a groundbreaking radio station in its area, and it was freeform. It was very eclectic. It had all sorts of musicians. Again, I mentioned to you like Bruce and Bonnie Raitt and Emmylou Harris. They were being played on that station, but Al Jarreau was also played on that station. And this station did a live broadcast from the venue and they recorded it. It was professionally mixed live on the scene by Sonority Sounds, which was a local audio company that mixed the audio. And they had a sound truck. So last year, thanks to a good buddy of mine, Alex Courtwright, who I've known for a long time, Alex introduced me to David Einstein, and I met with David, and he had the tape of Al at the Child Herald. And when I saw this tape, I just couldn't believe it. I had kind of this flashback sort of experience because I remember Al telling me about the concert, and he had remembered that he had performed there. But here's what I got to tell you.
Here's the tape.
That's the tape reel. That is the actual cover of the tape reel box. But this comes in an early part of Al Jarreau's career. I like to say he was swinging for the fences. He was leaving his mark, making impressions on audiences, and making a name for himself. He was incredible. And if you listen to this recording from the very first opening notes, he's engaging, he's commanding this performance, taking over the room, connecting with this audience, and it's an uplifting, highly energetic performance, and the energy is just hot. And it's a hot August night in 1976 here in Washington, and it's an amazing recording. Now, the vinyl is all analog, cut from the original tape reel. Now, we can't always say that, but the sound on the tape itself was a mixed master in itself, sounded wonderful. There might have been a little bit of EQ or some mild adjustment that was done, but we actually went from the tape reel cutting right into the lacquer. Matt Luthans, who actually has cut all these releases, I believe, from the mastering lab in Salina, Kansas, worked on this project with us. So, you know, we interviewed a whole who's who of people, from Dionne Warwick to the great Nile Rodgers that produced him, to Will Downing. And we have all sorts of really wonderful words and collections of essays. And it's a testimonials, and we have testimonials, and it's a tribute to him. Lots of incredible photographs. Jean-Pierre Loire, Tom Copy, Ralph Embor. We got the great A. Scott Galloway to write liner notes, and we also had liner notes written by Richard Harrington, who is the former head music writer at the Washington Post. I'm very proud of this release. I wish Al could be here, but it captures him in brilliant form, and he sounds amazing. And all you need to do is listen. And that Fender Rhodes itself, there's something when I hear it in that room, it just takes me to a whole nother place. Just wonderful
I
stuff.
I was surprised how great the sound quality was on this. Not just the recording, but just the ambience, like you said, the Fender Rhodes go in the right left channels. Uh, Very natural, nice sounding recording. He did a version of Fire and Rain by James Taylor that really surprised me. I thought, how can he do Fire and Rain? It's really made it his own. It's a really great interpretation. So
This came,
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, this album, by the way, came out right after his Warner Brothers reprise release, Glow, had come out, which, by the way, was produced by Tommy Wapuma and the great Al Schmidt. And Fire and Rain and Rainbow in Your Eyes, the Leon Russell composition, are actually from that album. But it's great because you hear a live performance of it, and the energy is just through the roof. And then, he does a version of Take Five on here, which was a
Mhm.
tune that he really made his own. and doing the great Paul Desmond classic. So it's a wonderful release. Very, very exciting.
Great. Let's
Very
move
happy.
on. Yeah, great sounding release. Um, how about we move on to the blues?
What about we move on to Sun Ra? Well, let's cap off the
That,
resonance
that's
behind you.
fine. I'm
Is that all right?
making.
Would you mind if we do that? I thought maybe we'll do it label by label.
I,
Now,
I'm
this
always
really,
confused as all your labels because you got so many.
I hear you. I know it is
I can't keep
confusing.
track of you. You're all over the
You're a
place.
patient man. Here we go in that cover photo by the great Jan Persson, capturing Sun Ra in his glory, and our wonderful designer Burton Yount, who created just another piece of modern art with the packaging and the layout. This is my second project with the Sun Ra estate. Um, and the first one was Sun Ra at the Showcase, which I was involved with, which came out last year. And on my Jazz Detective label. And this release is for the Resonance label. Now, this is Sun Ra recorded live in performance at the Left Banke Jazz Society in Baltimore in 1978. Now, there's some people out there I think will recognize that in 78, the same evening of our performances, filmmaker Robert Muggy was on the spot and recorded the second set of music. And he used it for his brilliant documentary, A Joyful Noise, about Sun Ra. This is actually the first set of music, and the recordings come from Michael D. Anderson at the Sun Ra Archives. And these are recordings that the band actually made. This wasn't made by the Left Banke. This was made by the band, and a lot of people aren't aware of this, but Sun Ra had engineers that traveled with him
Hmm.
on the road when they recorded hundreds and hundreds, I probably guess you could say thousands of hours, to be honest with you. So we found these recordings, and I'm really happy about this. That's a wonder. There's a copy of the tape reel itself. Um, and on the back page there, that wonderful photograph captured by the legendary
This
photographer.
one?
Not when I was talking about the one on the back. That's from Verrill Oakland,
Love
who
that
is a
photo.
very important photographer. And that picture, I just was really personally very struck by it. And like when we do our releases, I always try to have incredible packaging. I want photographs, I want words and testimonials from individuals. Um, for this release, we spoke to the great Craig Taborn, and also spoke with Gary Bartz, where we interviewed them extensively about Sun Ra because they both had something to say. And at one point, Sun Ra actually was trying to recruit Gary Bartz. Again, countless photographs and images in there that go along with the music. But this is, classic Sun Ra in an incredible period in the 1970s. Um, and it features the great John Gilmore and also June Tyson amongst many of its other players. And it's an incredible performance of Sun Ra. Again, it's the first set of music from that night in 78. And filmmaker Robert Muggy also shared with us a couple of bonus tracks, including the version of Around Midnight, and I'm sorry, one other composition which escapes me, which he used in his film, and he gave it to us as bonus tracks. So, anyways, I'm very happy about this. It's a new release for Resonance Records, which is very nice for us to have. And my boss, George Claben at Resonance, actually got the chance to meet Sun Ra back in the 60s because my boss, George, worked for Bernard Stolman very briefly, almost as an intern at ESP Disc. And you can just see the layout and the packaging is so thought provoked. It's a great presentation. And I want people to really, when they buy one of my projects, I want them to have um, great package, great liner notes, images, something to accompany that listen. I want them to have great reading material and other editorial and images and the like. So
Beautiful
anyway,
photos in there. And we should shout out to uh, Marshall Allen, who just celebrated his 100th birthday not too long ago. Still leading the band after all these years. And
yeah,
it's been great.
And we interviewed him for this package. I'm sorry, I mentioned
That's why I
June
brought it up. See
Gilmore
if you
and
interviewed.
June Tyson, but I meant to mention him.
I thought you did. That's why I wanted to mention it. Yeah,
Mhm.
great. Yeah, you've done a lot of projects at the Left Bank. This is what, your fourth or fifth Left Bank? I can't
Oh,
keep it all straight.
it's something like that. I did the Roy Brooks Understanding.
That was
I did
beautiful.
Sonny Stitt. I did Walter Bishop. I did Shirley Scott. I did Etta Jones. Yeah, you're right. And this is the sixth one. Well, this again, these tapes don't come from the Left Bank archives, unlike the others,
Right.
but I've been a co-custodian of their tape archives for about 6, 7 years now with a gentleman named John Fowler, who is the charter member from the Left Bank Jazz Society. And we've been able to weave these releases out of these tapes that we find. The Left Bank was an incredibly important organization. It was multicultural and diverse, Black and white people, men and women. And they came together, folks who had day jobs during the week and who on the weekends and then once during the week would meet for the weekly meeting. And then on Sunday afternoons, they would put on these concerts at the famous ballroom in Baltimore where families would come out. There would be all sorts of food and drink, and it was really a lively part of the
It's right
community.
there in your backyard where you grew up in that area and got to experience that.
I did. And
Lucky.
there's actually a very interesting piece if you Google Left Bank Jazz Society NPR, All Things Considered, did an article, a news story on this last year, talking about the famed organization. It was really an amazing group of people that came together to put on these concerts. And what's remarkable, they brought in a lot of talent from the East Coast, primarily New York, but also Philadelphia, where Sun Ra lived. And they would train it into town. And that was, by the way, where John Coltrane played his last performance was at the Left Bank.
Hmm.
And had
Did not know
everyone from
that.
Wes Montgomery to Grant Green to the countless legends, Art Blakey, everybody played there. So it's nice to be able to celebrate and evoke the memory of the legendary Left Bank and the famous ballroom. I'm very proud about
Maybe
it.
somebody will do a documentary about the Left Bank someday.
They should. I think so.
I got two B's left.
Oh,
Bill or BB?
you choose. Which would you like?
I have BB on top.
Okay.
We're in the
Let's talk
blues
about
now. We're out of jazz and into the blues. BB and
this.
friend.
Yes, sir. Oh man. So what should I tell you about this? Well, first of all, this is another release that comes to us from the famed INA archives in France, which oversees the legendary ORTF and Radio France archives. These were recordings that were made at the Nancy Pulsations Jazz Festival in France in 1977. And I'm a huge fan of BB King, like I know a lot of your viewers out there are too. Here's one of the main takeaways on why this recording is so special. A few different things. Now, first of all, as far as we know, and I was talking with Chris Morris from Variety, who actually wrote the press release for us, and he's a big BB King file. This is actually the only known official document of this band captured live in performance. And that's important because this was the band with Kato Walker and BB King's nephew, Walter King on tenor sax. And this band, this was the band that BB King took on the road with him. If you saw BB King in the 1970s, this was probably the group that you saw most likely. They didn't go into the recording studio with him. They got their days off, I guess you could say then. But this was the band that you saw him with. But when you listen to this music, and it's recorded incredibly well, you get to hear BB King soloing. You hear a lot of instrumental playing, and that's also something very different than the studio experience of BB King. And I really love these performances. They capture him in another time. I feel like I'm transported back to the 70s. There's something about the set and the music and the performance, and it'll give you the chills because he gets an incredibly warm reception from this audience, and including several standing ovations at the end where the audience is just absolutely roaring. He had them eating out of the palm of his hand. But man, you got to listen to this because it's so wonderful to hear BB King playing. And he's not just singing, but the whole band is really red hot. And I've been a fan of this man for a long time. This is a release that comes out on my Deep Digs label, which is a partnership with the folks at Elemental Music in Barcelona. And and this is probably like, probably the 10th album. I haven't counted how many, but I've been working with the good folks at Ina in Paris now for a number of years, putting out these recordings. And these tapes were just sitting on a shelf, tucked away. So I'm
Uh,
glad we could dust them off and we got a new transfer made and we're able to work with those for the mastering. And it sounds wonderful. We also had Matt Luthans that did all the audio restoration. Ina transferred the tapes, and then Matt and I prepared everything. But it's an incredible experience. And by the way, part of BB's opening theme music is Blue Monk from Thelonious Monk going right into Caledonia from Louis Jordan. But it's a burning set. We've got The Thrill Is Gone on there too, and Sweet 16, which are staples in his discography. But man, you got to listen start to finish. Open a nice bottle of wine or something, or twist something really good. But in all seriousness, it reminds me of the greatness of BB King when I listen to it. And I'm just really excited. I also will tell you, perhaps I'm high on my own stash, so to speak. Since I've had these promos now for about 2 weeks now, I've listened to this thing probably about 7 times
well,
on my own, just because I'm really enjoying it. And it's really a thrill. And the BB King as a part, the BB King estate made this possible, as did Elemental Music. And this is an official release. This isn't like another one of these. I'll tell you something. Can I
I
meander a
love
little?
going off on these bootlegs and Eurotrash recordings.
Well,
Go
I want
ahead.
to say that there's like a series of these lost recordings that come out. I'm not going to name the company,
Hmm.
and they're advertising on social media and such. And there are a lot of people that aren't paying the artists. They're not paying publishing. They wave the flag. Oh, it's under the public domain. They're being disrespectful to a lot of artists. We pay these families, we pay the musicians, and we do the right steps. And even Universal Music Group, uh, MCA, and who BB King was signed to at this period. I think it's MCA. They're a participant. They gave us permissions. We go through great lengths to do the projects that we do, getting those permissions, those sign-offs. We play by a different set of rules here in the States. And Elemental Music is based in Europe, but they have really, again, like with Resonance and with Blue Note, of course, and the other folks that I work with, everything is always above board. And I think that that's very important for the way that we treat the music and treat the
And,
musicians.
and none of those people have access to original recordings, I assume. They're taking stuff from CDs, they're taking stuff from, just random bootlegs.
Now, this one company I know about does fine tapes, and they do, looks like very nice presentations, but I'm also aware that not everybody pays the musicians and pays publishing and is respectful to the music
And
that's embodied on the
the rules
recordings.
in Europe were different from the rules in the US. So it might have been legal in Europe, but always pointing out to people online that rule was not the rule in the United States. And that was about the copyright of the recording, not the royalties. And if you want to rip somebody off, yeah, rip off poor black jazz musicians. That's really what you're going to build your business on. I'm very critical of anybody who's not doing it the right way, and you're the guy who's always doing it the right way. So
Thanks
thank you
for
for
saying.
bringing that up.
Nope, no problem. I just wanted to mention it. I'm not trying to be holier than thou or anybody else, but there's a distinction to be made because it really kills me when I see some of the bootleg stuff that comes out, and you wouldn't know it sometimes because they like to dress it up. but it's really important. There was a lot of steps that were made, and there was a lot of risk that went into putting this music out as well. So, anyways, man, I mean, all these records we're talking about are amazing. That BB King now hit such a personal note for me, though.
It's got a horn
I
section on it. It's got a huge, not a huge, but a pretty jamming horn section that I really wasn't expecting to hear with BB King. Saxophones and a trumpet, and they sound great.
there's even a trumpet solo from Eddie Rowe in there, which is in there too. The band stretches out, Greg. It's the BB King experience live, and it's really true to what you would have experienced.
I never
But
got to, so
yeah, like the hair stands up on my arms when I listen to it, especially you get into it with the roaring applause at the end, especially in that last side of the record, side four with the audience response. Just
I haven't got that far. That's about the only second disc I haven't listened to. I listen to everything here except maybe the last disc on that one. So I'll get on my homework and doing that.
come on, man. No snoozing.
I got I got so many records this month. It's crazy. I'll tell you later why. Um, One left on my pile here, and it's Bill in Norway, 1970.
Yes, the
Last one on
Kong
the list.
man. So let's talk about my friends Jordi Soleil and Carlos Agustin Callenbert at Elemental Music. And we have been in this archival landscape now for basically just a year longer than a year less than when I started working at Resonance. I started producing records for them in 2011 or so. And they have been really scouring a lot of tape archives in Europe, and they befriended the folks at the Kongsberg Jazz Festival who have opened up their vaults. And lo and behold, was this amazing concert of Bill in 1970. And if you had to ask me to characterize the performance, I would really use the word energetic and very inspiring. Bill must have been in an especially great mood. You know, with Bill and this trio, these guys are painters, right? So every time when they play, there's something different that comes out onto the canvas, so to speak. And this is a very well recorded performance, but the performances themselves sound spectacular. And I'm biased. I've said this before publicly, but this was the trio that I first discovered. It wasn't the Scott LaFaro, Paul Modian band. It was this recording. I've said this, I think, before, but when I was a teenager, maybe 18 or 19, I saved up some money, and I remember going to the Tower Records, and I there were these two box sets from Bill Evans. There was this turquoise one where he's head down, the complete Riverside recordings. And then you had the one, the gray box of him and the beard, the fantasy recordings. I don't know if I flipped a coin or what I did, but I got the fantasy recordings. So for me, listening to the Tokyo concert and Invitation and these recordings that were made in the 70s, especially with Marty Morell and Eddie Gomez on bass, it is to me some really important gospel. And when it's working on these releases now, Greg, this is the 12th production I've done with the Bill Evans
Wow.
estate. Number 13 will be coming in April, and number 14 will be coming next
So
fall.
you've released more Bill Evans than any other producer in history, probably.
Oh, I don't know about that. I don't know about
You're,
Oren Keep
you're
News. I
getting
got
close. You're getting close.
Well, I just say that it's different. When you're a producer, like when Helen Keane
Right.
and Orrin Keepnews were, there were other judgmental, important sort of judicious decisions made.
Different relationship.
A different relationship, but we're working with the family. We're working with his son Evan, who has been incredibly supportive. And it's great to bring these releases out. But I love this trio. It's another incredible document, and they're all different in their own way. And it's a stereo recording as well. I'm very proud about this. To, just to give you an idea, I have to look at the brag sticker. Yeah, because yeah, I interviewed Craig Taborn, Aaron Parks for this one. Yeah. And we have these photographs that we found from the festival and also from some other photographers as well. And we even had the engineer who was there but spoke about this, and another Norwegian pianist by the name of Roy Helven who was there. But anyways, this is really wonderful. And I want folks to stay tuned because next year we're going to be putting out an Art Pepper recording on the Elemental label, which comes from this archives as well. A lot of incredible music exists because of many of these festivals that recorded these performances, and we're very grateful to have that now. And it's also important because these weren't previously leaked and they've been locked up for a long time. So I'm really happy about this. I feel very proud to play a part. I know that so many of the folks out there spend their hard-earned money on these releases, and we're always trying to build the best experience, both with audio and the fidelity, but also the overall presentation. I want the fans to be able to take these records off the shelf for years and years to come from now, where they'll enjoy them as much. There's a lot of vetting that goes into it. We're not just jockeying to put out any tapes possible, but finding relevant special recordings that matter. And I'm really proud. I'm happy to have a part in all this. And
Getting one of these releases from you, it's almost, I don't want to say homework, but there's so much to read, so much to look at, so much to listen to. You can really spend a whole evening just digging into all the great stuff, and so many great interviews and articles. Each one is a little historical time capsule. So Record Store Day Black Friday is the junior of the two record stores days. The big
yes,
main event is in the spring. Does that mean you're going to have another bunch of stuff coming out in the spring that you may or may not be able to talk about?
I have some releases that I can mention by name. I'm not going to say whether or not they're for Record Store Day, but I'll let you know what I'm working on right now. Okay. So,
We're listening.
uh, and this goes across the board. Now, I will tell you, Elemental is going to have an amazing Bill Evans record that will also surprise a lot of people. We've been finding things that are not in the discographies. And I think that that's also important because when you find something, it really even means that collectors don't know about its existence. The next year on the Resonance label, we're going to be issuing the first previously unissued Kenny Dorham recordings.
Wow.
Gosh, I'm guessing in maybe 45 years. If
Wow.
I had to guess, I got to look at the discography closer, but I believe that that's going to be the case. We're going to have a Charles Mingus project, which is going to be pretty freaking epic.
Wow.
That'll be coming. I have Freddie Hubbard on fire that's going to remind everybody how important that he was. Also working on well, I'm working with the Patsy Cline estate, not jazz, but that'll be coming from my label Deep Digs next year, which is going to be important. And by the way, I listen to so many different types of music. It's nice when you get to be known for something. I'm grateful to be known as the Jazz Detective, but I listen to a lot of different stuff.
I didn't know
And
you were a Van Halen fan until you leaked that information to me recently.
I am. I mean, I listen to Van Halen at the gym a lot. That's like I listen to certain things when I'm lifting weights, and
Pump
things
you
that
up.
are higher.
Look at those guns he's got.
Who?
You.
Oh man.
I
Well, thanks. I try to be healthy. You know, you make records, and I
know.
spend a lot of time exercising and drinking my water, and I just want to keep doing what I'm doing for a long time. I really am having the time of my
You got the
life.
dream life, listening to music and putting it out and
I
traveling around
really,
the world.
I truly do. I thank my lucky stars for that, you know. So, but there's more to come, you know, and there's other things that I'm leaving out as well. But
I
it's
know. I know you got a few in your back pocket that you will reveal when the time is right. So we appreciate you spending the time with us. I know you got a busy day and a lot of interviews coming up to promote this busy holiday season. So I think we'll let you go after this. And thank you so much again for sharing all the great music with us.
Thanks for all your support, Greg, and for all the viewers out there. I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for allowing this mission to continue. It's because of all of you and supporting these projects that we can do it. It's not lost on me. And I just feel so fortunate to have this life. And everybody out there has played a big part in that. And I just can't thank everyone enough. And I'm really appreciative to you, Greg. Thanks for having me today.
Thanks, Ev. We'll sign off.
All right.